Carolyn Rogers is?
Child, come on now.
Okay, good. So y'all know.
It must be deep.
So.
Okay, some of us don't know.
She was one of the great poets of the era, of the Black Arts era. And,
Right, great,
yes.
great poet.
And you can find her in those early anthologies,
Yes.
Black poetry anthologies.
Yes.
And she was inducted into the International Literary Hall of Fame for writers of African descent in 2009.
Get out of here.
One of my mother's favorite words as well. But anyway, so this poem is called Mad Love for Miles.
Yes.
With props to Carolyn and Rogers.
Cute.
Funky Miles, cool Miles, blue Miles, new Miles, old Miles, brewed Miles, stewed Miles, up Miles, down Miles, frowning Miles, smiles of Miles. Have you seen Miles? So many Miles. You a motherfucker, Miles. But not the last motherfucker. Pimping, primping, styling, and profiling. I once knew a nigga named Miles. Did you know him too?
Yeah.
Once he took me flying high in the sky over a sea so blue and green. Another time we kicked it on the bridge between East St. Louis and Boogaloo. But sometimes he left me so confused. One day I was a princess waiting for my black prince.
Right.
Next day, a bitch, $2 hoe, sent me down the street for some blow. And then by candlelight, he moved me all over again. Someday, yes, someday, funny Valentine. Someday, twisted Valentine, my prince will come.
Yeah.
A motherfucker named Miles told me so. Between a black eye and the most sublime kiss. Oh, how could you miss my bittersweet black prince? How could you miss this sweet, sweet black man asshole?
Thank you very much. We're going to bring up probably the person who ran the streets with me the most was Amiri Baraka. We ran into Baraka in multiple cities, Newark, DC, Chicago, all over the place. Next poet is Kenneth Carroll.
Thank you. Thank Eileen and Shrikiana for having this, and Maria. Without you, none of this would have been possible. And I would say, as a pseudo scholar, but Maria, your part of your life and your mom's life with Baraka is uncharted in academia. And that's the part we need to hear. And back in the day, I would have known what agent to send you to start writing that memoir. I don't know them now like that, but you should be talking to the finding of those letters to your mom.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's amazing. It is amazing. And nobody has that information currently in the Baraka sphere if you look at the work that he has out there. But again, thanks to Brian for this program. And Brian, the Georgetown story that Brian told about Ernesto Cardinal and Baraka is such a great story. One, Brian remembers this. So we literally found out as we were at the event for the reading that the State Department had denied Ernesto Cardinal a visa to come to America, which was unusual, unprecedented. Baraka pulls out a legal pad and starts writing a poem. And gets up, he's reading the poem. America, where's Ernesto? Where is Ernesto, you motherfuckers? I mean, he's just like ripping off the point right there. And the second great thing about it, Brian will remember, we're leaving Georgetown University and we start walking out the building and we get lost. We walking around how to get out. Baraka said, Hey man, hey Brian, get me the hell out of here. They got bodies in here. They got enslaved, and y'all heard the stories about Georgetown, I don't know when that happened, but Georgetown and enslaved Africans and how that kept the university afloat.
Right.
You remember that, Brian? And then he told Brian, yeah, man, I'm gonna stop and get a beer. And Brian was like the driver when Baraka came to town. So let me do this kind of like this. I'll do that last, okay. All right. Let me start out with some Baraka. Me and Tom Porter were on a panel about Baraka that was given by the Hurston Wright Foundation. And I had done a paper, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I had done a paper, and it is funny because one of the first things Baraka talked to me about when I met him, he was like, man, you see Negroes on panel, man, they don't even have nothing prepared, man. Don't go up there and just wing it, you know. So, you know what I mean? Like I do panels like this. So, but anyway, so I did a paper called Amiri, Baraka and the Poetics of Opposing Genocide. But this short excerpt is from Baraka's 2004 appearance at Furious Flowers, I believe that's what it was, Furious Flower. And so this is part of Baraka's poem that he read as keynote. So how should we praise them? And what should we call them who style themselves God? Whose new world order seems old and Miltonic, in that they rule and do not serve. But somehow the term Satan seems too narrow. The word devil is too limiting. But there must be some description, some appropriate horrific we can coin. Something that says, liar, murderer, maniac, animal, something that indicates their importance. Amiri Baraka. You can find that on YouTube. So let me just read part of just like the first paragraph. Amiri Baraka, in this moment of U.S. sponsorship of genocide in Gaza, now we know all of Palestine, and the attacks on Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and elsewhere, will be writing the kind of poems that got him removed as the poet laureate of New Jersey, or the kinds of poems that Newark prosecutors read at his trial. Amiri Baraka will be organizing in the street and reading fire as he read the author of these imperialist massacres. This is a brilliant humanity of the Baraka I knew, who I met in the 80s at Woody's Hilltop, a club across from Howard University, where Baraka was performing with Nasser Abadeh and his band Supernova. At the bar before his reading, I, novelist poet, who had read Baraka's poem in 1,000 books and anthologies at my local library, sat nervously next to this literary giant as the House speakers blared Twinkle, Twinkle. That's Thelonious Monk. Miles turned to me and said, Monk is a bad motherfucker. I nodded. That was our first exchange. Okay, all right, I'll leave it here. I'll save the essay for journals that won't take it. Okay. All right, so again, I'm pretty sure that Baraka would have something to say about the duopoly here. This piece is a reaction to some poets, and I talked to the poets, some of the poets who participated in this, and it was an anthology called Poets for Harris. And I was like, y'all niggas crazy, come on. You know what I mean? And Cornelius Eady, who's like one of the most wonderful guys you'll ever meet, wonderful poets. Yeah. He's the sponsor of this bullshit. And, I was like, I talked to him.
Call it.
Yeah, you what I'm saying, think about poetry, black poetry especially, and what it meant. We always had to oppose the people who were willing to kill us and murder the rest of the world, right? And especially in this moment where they're using our taxes, they're killing Palestinians in our name. And Baraka would have opposed that. And one of the things I want to say about the rest of the essay, this is so important. And I know we got some old school DC folks in here. I don't know this, but somebody can raise their hand. Anybody here remember Drum and Spear Bookstore?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Right. You remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, this is important. This is something that as I was preparing my notes for the Baraka panel, I came across this thesis from this Palestinian sister, Dr. Nadia El Ahmad. And I'm reading it, and the thesis is called Enemies of the Sun. And I'm reading it because it has a reference to Baraka in there. What I find out is 1970, Palestinian poets, all the great Palestinian poets were trying to publish an anthology. The anthology was rejected throughout the world. I'm talking about Mahmoud Darwish, Taqwan, all these poets. It had been rejected. The Palestinian poets brought the anthology manuscript to D.C. to the Drum and Spear bookstore. And who ran the Drum and Spear at the time? Cortland Cox, Tony Giddens.
Daphne Muse.
Right, exactly. Brought it to them, and they agreed to publish it. It was the first non-African publication that the bookstore put out. But check this out. Baraka is the only poet in that anthology who has a poem in that anthology. What it did was cement for me the connection between the black poets, the black freedom movement, and the Palestinian freedom movement. These Palestinian poets had talked about being influenced by Baraka and the black arts movement, right? 67, right? 64, 67. And so this is huge, right? And nobody knows this. Her thesis has yet to be published. So I'm saying we have this long history of black poets and writers connected to Palestine. I have a poem for Reuben Jackson. Reuben was supposed to go to Palestine as part of an exchange. And so the idea when I saw them promoting this Poets for Harris was actively involved in a genocide, actively involved and supporting it, right? Right. And so anyway, so here's a short point in reference to that. The epigraph was from a great poet, Czeslaw Miłosz, who has a poem. This is from his poem Dedication. Amazing poem. He's an amazing poet. What is poetry that does not save nations or people? This is what it sounds like when the poets surrender. When the poets surrender to power and fear, a quieting of the sea, pens crossed like M16s, celebration for an ice queen's hunger, blood and flesh bagged in verse, a chorus of children's screams, disappeared like Doha, nurseries under rubble, and no one like June Jordan, like Amamu Baraka, with resistant rhymes to a firm connection between hen and image. It is only Palestinian poets now who must renounce the enemies of the sun, a lonely summoning of the sky, the black poets retreating to skin and representation, dead elegies for the canon.
Woo.
And then, so I'm gonna close out with this because Laini Baraka, Eventually you get one of them words. And you get that look in
Right.
I said, no, as many checks that I wrote to him. Right. that's
You
my
can mess
sister.
my name up anytime.
But Mataka, just as she was talking about, Baraka, she was the first poet I saw at Ujima Shule, opening up for Dr. Ben. This was early 80s, maybe 1980. And I told her I had been reading the Black Art poets since I was like 13 or 14 at Woodbridge Library. Never heard poets read, right? So when I heard Mataka, I was like, we can sound like ourselves, you know? I mean, you read Black Arts and on the pages ourselves, but having never heard it, it blew my mind. And so that was such a significant thing. And so once I heard Lainey and then I heard Baraka, I was like, okay, we can sound like this. Because, you know, I mean, everybody else before that, I was thinking we had to sound like, you know, Library of Congress poets.
Right.
Y'all know that sound where the poets be reading like they don't care if you there, if you
Right.
listening.
Right.
I'm like, what? I'm like, how is that in the audience? So, and Baraka was key for that. And I should say, Baraka, when I ran DC Writers Corps, every time we called him for a fundraiser, he would come down. We did 2 big fundraisers, and